Hi everyone, and welcome to worship at Warwick Anglican Parish. This is our kids' message for Pentecost Sunday. You'll see that the colours that we feature today in worship are red or gold. They remind us of the Holy Spirit, whose symbol is sometimes fire. Fire to warm us and encourage us. The story today is The Gardener and the Vine, and it's written and illustrated by Andrew McDonough. You can find this story and many more on Andrew McDonough's site, Lost Sheep. I'd really recommend you have a look at it. The Gardener and the Vine. On a wild and lonely hill, on a thin, scraggly vine, lived a branch named Basil. Basil never visited anyone, and no one ever visited Basil until the day the gardener came. The gardener looked up and down the vine. "Basil," he said, "you're exactly the branch I've been searching for." Basil looked over his shoulder to check if there were any other branches named Basil nearby. No, the gardener was talking to him. "I have good news and bad news," said the gardener. "The good news is you are going to grow a lot of grapes." "Excellent," said Basil. "And the bad news?" I need to cut you off this scraggly vine." "Oh," said Basil, I think you've got the wrong branch." "Trust me, Basil, I'm a good gardener." Basil thought about the bad news. Then he thought about the good news. "Well, okay then," said Basil. "I'm in your hands." So the gardener took his snippers and snip! He placed Basil into his bag. "This is the end!" cried Basil. "No," said the gardener, "this is just the beginning." Down the wild, lonely hill they climbed, away from the thin, scraggly vine, across the hot, hot desert, over the snowy mountains, through the jungly jungle, and into a beautiful garden. And there stood a magnificent vine. "Wow," said Basil, "now that's a vine." "Basil," said the gardener, "I have good news and bad news. The good news is you're going to grow plenty of grapes. The bad news is I need to cut the vine." "No," said Basil, you can't cut this magnificent vine." "Trust me, Basil, I'm the gardener." The gardener took his snippers and snip, he cut deep into the vine. Then the gardener took Basil and placed him deep into the cut of the vine. And the gardener wrapped around and around, joining Basil and the vine. "This is the end," cried Basil. "I'm going to die." "No," said the gardener, "this is a new beginning. Get ready to live." Then a new strength and a new life surged through Basil. "Basil," said the gardener, "meet the vine." "Welcome, Basil," said the vine. "I have good news and great news. The good news is now you're part of me." And the great news?" asked Basil. "We're going to produce plenty of grapes," said the vine. And sure enough, that summer, Basil and the vine produced plenty of grapes, thanks to the gardener. Now, this story today is based on a verse from John's Gospel, chapter 15, where Jesus says, "I am the true vine and my Father is the gardener. If you stay joined to me and I stay joined to you, then you will produce lots of fruit." Take a bit of a moment or two to perhaps reread that story. Take time to think about who the gardener is, who the vine is, and who we are in that story. Our job in life, our calling, is to trust God, to be connected to Jesus in love, and to produce lots of fruit. Fruit like joy, peace, love. So, go and be a blessing just as surely as you are blessed. Amen.